has been undertaking research into Welsh society. To him, our figures underline the difficulties facing many in escaping their poverty.
It's certainly true that jobs of £150 a week are quite common. It's very difficult to raise a family of three on that sort of level because you immediately lose certain benefits, like housing benefit, for example. Family income support doesn't make up the shortfall totally. People are faced with a real economic choice of loss of income if they take work, and you and I, faced with that distinction, would choose benefit. It's not a question of voluntary benefit dependency, it's a rational economic choice. People are forced into it by the structure of wages and benefits.
The survey found that 1 in 5 households cannot save £10 a month or cannot afford household insurance. It means that for many thousands of people, financial security does not exist. And 1 in 10 Welsh families are too poor even to buy toys for their children. Teresa Loveridge is a neighbour of the Dowers. She's a single mother coping on £86 in benefits a week, and within 4 days she's down to her last few pounds. She answered no to most of our questions on poverty criteria. Once again, it's food for the children that takes priority. There's no television in the house, no telephone, and she's no warm coat and only 1 pair of shoes.
I'd feel depressed, terrible, because I know I can't go out and buy for them all the time, like, but it is awful. Every time I get my shopping in, my coal and my electric and stuff like that, I'm lucky to have a £5 left a week.
So there's no way you can save
No.
a week, is there?
No.
Just a few pounds a week?
No, I couldn't. Like, because I have a £5 left after I've done all my shopping. And like, that got to last me the rest of the week then, till the following Tuesday. I used to work from the time I was 17 right up until I was 19, till I had my daughter. I used to be working in and out of jobs, and I used to, you know, love it, but my children come first.
Toys for the children are usually from relatives, but Teresa is proud of buying some herself. Her idea of a luxury is getting a new present or clothes for her children. She's lucky there's no damp in the house, but the furniture inside is all second-hand, and there are always sacrifices to be made for her children.
Birthdays, I do try and keep a bit back to get them something little, but like, I got to save right away through, try and save right away through the year to get them on a Christmas. If I haven't got money to get anything else, well, I can't get it. I just have to manage without.
As with many other families who are poor, daily life is not impossible, but paying for major basic items like beds present huge problems. Teresa Loveridge had to turn to the DSS for a loan. An annual holiday might be classed as a necessity by some. Teresa has never been.
Never ever had a holiday.
What's the furthest you've been?
Porthcawl. It's the furthest I've been. I go on day trips, maybe now and again, but not very often. Last year on my birthday, on September, was the last time I went out. But I didn't really enjoy myself because I didn't have much money to go out with. So that was the last time. But it's not very often. Unless there's something changes, like I will always be like a, always be like a.
It's poverty in the midst of plenty, and that's an experience. It's a very different experience when you can compare yourself to a lifestyle that you have no hope of ever achieving. In the 30s, in many ways, the whole community through the Great Depression was affected by that kind of poverty. What we see now are people living in quite isolated pockets of poverty, stigmatized by the wider community, excluded from the kind of way of life that's taken for granted all around them. And of course sensitive to that, and comparing themselves to that way of life, and finding their way of life very stark and negative and lacking in very basic comforts.
The survey highlights some uncomfortable truths about life for many in Wales today, and a side of Welsh society seldom made public is also captured in Roger Tiley's disturbing images. Yet in the 14 years he's focused on this kind of work, he believes he's never known poverty quite as bad as today's.
I've seen people sleep in rough. I've seen young people, 16-year-olds, living out in the street. You know, you see quite a lot of older, especially men, sort of sitting around the streets and sleeping rough, and they've been doing that for a long time. But when you see young people, when you see 16-year-olds doing it, it's very, very frightening, and it's very sad.
Well, this is my bed area. It's not much, it's not really much of a bed, but it's warm. The floor's flat and uncomfortable. But it's better than nothing. It's better than sleeping on the streets.
A disused church was home for the time being when we came to find Vicky Pearce. She's just 16 and has been living with others on the streets of Swansea for 3 months after family problems.
Family arguments and that make it pretty impossible to go home. And if I did, I know I'd end up back out on the streets within a week. It'd probably make it harder. There's a couple of people, they say, yeah, I want to be on the streets, but after a week they go back. And they've actually got that choice, they can make that choice, but the people that are really homeless, they don't have the choice. No one would make that decision.
The squat Vicky uses has no real amenities, little privacy or hygiene. Making food all too often means just spreading butter on bread, and there's no running water, no mains electricity, none of the basics of life raised in our survey. She survives as best she can, getting money during the day, but cannot claim benefit for another 2 years. At 16, Vicky is introduced to an underground world most of us will never see in a lifetime. Here we met another squatter called David, and another picture of poverty caught by Roger Tiley's camera. Yet at one time David was a DSS civil servant in London.
I was looking after, at one point, 27,000 people. Now, I've got nothing to do but look after my wounds and lick them. I think I'm 44. So I've been living rough now since I split up with my wife. 20 years. Sometimes it can be as cold as ice and nobody wants to know, and then it is hard. You got no food, you got no blankets, you got nowhere to live. And after a while, walking around all of the time, you get so tired you just can't make it back to places of refuge. So you have to go without. And then people think, oh, well, look at him. Hasn't shaved for a week. Hasn't washed his hair. Look at him, he's only a dosser. Screw him off.
The squat has no sanitation to speak of. Vicky Pearce copes with a primitive toilet. For her, the very real danger is that she is at the beginning of a terrible slippery slope into homelessness that others like David have already tumbled down. Her ideas of luxury now are simple.
For me, a luxury would be to stay in someone's flat and have a nice hot bath, a hot meal and whatever, yeah. You find yourself going to bed at sort of 7 or 8 in the evening just so that you're not hungry or, you know, you're not cold, and you can go to sleep and forget everything and just, you know, dream about somewhere else or whatever.
During the day, Vicky leaves the squat to make money by selling the Big Issue magazine. Homelessness and all that brings is the one area where it's widely agreed absolute poverty still exists. Yet even for those with homes, our survey reveals 150,000 are damp, cold or in disrepair. Vicky, meanwhile, tries to make enough money for a hot meal and puts up with all that passers-by have to say.
I've just had abuse from people through selling the Big Issue, but a lot of people smile and say, yeah, okay, or they say no thank you, but then you get the odd person who walks through and, you know, call you all sorts of names. Things basically make you feel like you're not really worth living at all. Big Issue? I want to get a flat, and in the future I hope to go off to college.
She's hoping to earn enough money from selling the magazine to rent a flat. She insists this is not simply teenage rebellion, and it's not her choice to live this way. She wants to break the cycle of homelessness and poverty and lead a normal life.
I've got an interview next week as well for another job. I've been around loads of places, but most people, they won't even see you, but the state of you, you know, what you're wearing and how you look and where you're living and things like that. I've known a lot better times than this, and there's so many people in Wales that are in the same situation as I'm in, whether they're old, young, middle-aged. It's getting worse, it's not getting better.
Vicky at 16 seems old now beyond her years. The devastating effects of homelessness or poverty are taking toll on hundreds of thousands of people in Wales. Our survey shows only a minority of Welsh people are poor, but that minority is a staggering 1 in 4.
It's very, very obvious if you're poor what you can't have and what other people around you have. As I said, majority of people in society, the majority of people in Wales, 75%, aren't poor. They have more than they've ever had in the past. But for those who are in poverty, they have less, and they can see there's a bigger gap. The gap between the rich and poor is wider now, as I said, than it has been for 50 years.
The Welsh industrial landscape has changed beyond recognition in the last decade. Tens of thousands of mining jobs have gone. But research for this programme shows the stark truth of how much still is left to do in replacing those jobs. Much publicised inward investment, say some experts, has not yet been the answer.
Well, I think what we're looking at in terms of poverty in Wales is the consequence of economic decline, and ultimately the only real cure for these problems is the reversal of that decline. So a programme of economic regeneration which reaches beyond the coastal corridors of the M4 and the A5. We have to reach into these communities and instill some genuine economic recovery within them. Having said that, the means to achieve that are obviously very difficult to imagine, and certainly would require massive investment by central government and the Welsh Office in Wales.
We asked Welsh Office ministers to take part in this programme, but were told that none of them would be interviewed about the findings of our survey. For the great majority of us, poverty is a thing of the past. If we are in work, we're likely to be better off than ever. But the dramatic change shown by this research is just how many people are poor and are effectively living in the past.
If the trends continue, I mean, more and more people have been falling into poverty, and more people have been staying in poverty over the 80s, and particularly since the recession of the 90s in Wales. And if it continues, it's going to have tremendous consequences for society. The long-term consequences are very expensive because poverty is linked to poor health. So if you live a long time in poverty, your health in the future is likely to become much worse. It's linked to low educational achievement for children, so it means need to retrain the workforce at a later date. And what's particularly worrying is there's now becoming a generation of young people who have never had jobs. And the long-term consequences, the long-term costs of retraining those people sometime in the future, if they're ever needed to fulfil jobs, and we hope that will happen as the economy picks up, it is very expensive. It's a very expensive prospect.
The old collieries and the coal tips and, you know, the miners with black faces walking home to the baths, that's gone now, but to a certain extent, you know, the poverty is still there. That people are walking around the streets aimlessly with nothing to do, no money to spend, and they just exist rather than live. Photographers in the future will be photographing very similar things to me, I think.
What is rich and what is poor? A man said to me once, a friend said to me once, he said, if you buy what you want through the week, get what you want through the week, and you've got a penny in your pocket at the end of the week, you're a millionaire. Oh, what a laugh.